Hello, hello, and welcome to our NDTC Netroots Nation training on building partnerships to advance your campaign. My name is Brittany Baxter. I'm a little bit of a mess today. Pay that no mind. I assure you, I am highly qualified to execute this training. Really excited to be here with you all today. This is my second instance of engaging today. So really excited about the new platform. Happy to see folks engaging. And, I am actually hailing from Buffalo, New York right now, where I'm from, but I currently reside in Washington, D.C. I am a political strategist consultant, and I currently run a pro-cannabis equitable cannabis legislation PAC. Have about 13 years of experience. I've been training with NDTC for 3 years now. I'm one of the OG trainers, so excited to be here. And I'm really excited to talk to everyone about building strategic partnerships that will lay a foundation for really effective campaigns and for power building, collective power building beyond campaigns. So I'm ready to go ahead and get started. Just a couple of things here first. I'm going to share my screen in a second so that we can jump into the slide deck. But I want folks to, Jamie is in the chat, so go ahead and share where you're from. I see folks from coastal Georgia, from Oakland, California, somebody from Raleigh, North Carolina. Would love to see where you all are from, and just know that we are going to use the chat heavily, and we want to make sure that we're providing you with everything that you need. And so Jamie is my right hand and will let me know if there are questions, comments, concerns, hopes, dreams, or wishes that you all drop in the chat that are relevant to the training, and I will do my best to answer them as we see them. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to take a second to share my screen, and we'll jump right into the training. Let me find a window. Here we go. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and launch this presentation. And do full screen. All right, so I want to make sure that everyone can see. I think there we go. All right, beautiful. I'm going to, if you all give me 1 second here, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to split my screen so that I can see everything that's going on and make sure that you all are getting what you need and I can see the things that I need to do. So while I'm doing that, please get some water, grab a snack. It's Saturday, so I guess a glass of wine, whatever you need to do to be on point. So let's go ahead and get started. And again, welcome to building progressive infrastructure through powerful partnerships, right? I come out of community organizing, and I strongly believe that we are stronger together. And when we pull everyone along and work in a way that makes sense for all of us, we can get a whole lot further. So let's get ready to train. I would like everyone, including me, to take a deep breath, get comfortable. If you need a pillow, stretch, do a little neck cracking, whatever it is you need to get limber and exercise those brain muscles, because we are going to work you all for the next hour. Okay? All right, let's do this. Oh, I gotta click on the things. All right, so let's talk a bit about our objectives today. So today, you all are going to come away with 3 key objectives that are going to be critical as you go out into the world and build partnerships to advance the issues that you are passionate about. So first, we're going to understand the qualities of an effective political partner. Second, we're going to be able to manage partnerships and relationships with consultants, because that's crucial. Consultants play a huge role on campaigns, and it's important to know when and where you need them and how to make sure that your relationship with them is productive, because we as a consultant, we are expensive. So you want to make sure you're getting your bang for your buck, and the work is building what you are intending to build. All right, and then the last piece of this, which I think is super important, is actually handling those difficult conversations with consultants, because sometimes they are going to have a difference of opinion, but at the end of the day, when you pay for a product, you need to do that with the expectation that what you're asking for is done in the way that you need it to be presented for the audience that you will be using that product for. So I'm going to teach you how to advocate for yourselves a little bit with folks who are typically the experts, but not the experts on what you are doing and what your vision is. So let's go ahead and get in here. And please, I'm from Western New York, so I speak fast and slow at the same time. Please jump in the chat and let me know if I need to just take a deep breath or repeat something or do the things. I want to make sure that everyone is on the same page or at least in the same book. All right, so let's talk first about identifying political partners. You need to know who even is in what the landscape looks like and who you can align yourselves with. And so I'd love to just hear some examples from folks. Go ahead. This is our first use of the chat today. So jump into the chat and just drop a couple of organizations and individuals that are key community stakeholders that your campaign would want to partner with, and then tell us why. And we'll read a few of those and then keep it moving, okay? I'll give you all a second to do that. I also, because I like to think outside the box, I want you to be creative and thinking about the groups that typically can be missing and how you can engage them creatively in a way that allows you to tap into their bases, but also like create a bigger bench, right? Because that's what we're all about here at NDTC, is building that blue bench and making sure that it's big enough for all of us who are in this big tent of a party to come together and work and advance the work in a meaningful way. All right, folks, I'm looking for the drops. Let me see what we have going on here. All right. Y'all are lucky I can't see you because typically I'll call on folks. I come from a family of educators and I have no problem putting on my teacher hat and picking on people. So, from Vivian, yeah, community organizations and community leaders, absolutely. Nicole, yes, First Nation communities. A lot of times we neglect Indigenous communities, and they have a lot of political power, and they have a lot and can sometimes have the kind of power and influence in spaces that we don't necessarily think of are critical places to engage, but we should be thinking about things in that way. Because again, we are a big tent party. It's important that we're pulling in everyone to make sure that we're moving forward together. Okay, I want to see what else do we have here, folks. Obviously, we need to be thinking about all of the typical players, right? The unions, the democratic associations, the we have someone. Let's see who else. Let's see what else folks have in here. Secondary education groups, youth groups, absolutely, right? If you're running for school board, if you're running for a community focused or a youth focused position, you definitely want to make sure that you're speaking to the issues that matter to folks, especially when we're talking about engaging. You want to have all the perspectives of the folks who are dealing with issues that you would be responsible for governing on. All right, here we go. National Women's Political Caucus, absolutely, yes. Tap into those national groups and those state and local groups as well, because you're going to need a diversity of influence and access to money and power and strategy in order to make sure you have an effective campaign. All right, great job, folks. Let's go ahead and keep it moving. All right, now let's talk about these external partnerships, right? The reason that we build and move in coalition is because on campaigns, everything, our resources are limited, our time, our money, our people. And so bringing in these external partnerships who come with members, who come with infrastructure, who come with knowledge, who come with access to capital, right? That is important because it really flushes out, it puts the meat on the bones of your campaign. And it also is a way to not only build those and deepen those relationships for when you win, so that you can govern and bring these folks along and engage them in how you govern. It's also a way for you to lay that foundation to show that you've done the work in the community and that you understand the breakdown of in the hierarchies of how people interact with each other. All of that, this is all just relationship building. It's community organizing, it's organizing 101, and it's super important that we value these external relationships because those are typically, many times, those partnerships are the ones that take you to the finish line, right? You cannot run a campaign on your own. I mean, you can try. It will not be fun. It will be very lonely. So keep this in mind. You want strategic partnerships. You want to have like-minded, aligned folks and folks who at least believe and support in your value system. All right, so let's talk about some of the other external partnerships. We're talking about the county and state parties because you need them for data. You need to have access to the list of Democrats, of registered voters, of folks who could be registered but are not, or need to be re-engaged, right? Or literally just the historical data on the race that you're running in. You want to know how people typically turn out. You want to know who's actually giving money to whom, so you can identify potential funders, right? And then you want the unions and the PACs because they can run the IEs, they can move their membership, and they can advocate and endorse you and go into rooms that you don't necessarily have access to, and that's critical. The next group is these local constituency groups, right? So the Hispanic women's groups, right? The Jack and Jill groups, the parent teacher alliances, right? All of these groups who have specific constituencies that they focus and organize and engage, because you are going to need these folks. They're going to be the validators for your campaign. You will not be able to touch every single person that will vote in this election or that will touch this election. And it is important that you have identified groups that are trusted community, that have a trusted presence in the community, because then they're going to speak for you in your campaign, right? And so making sure that you are aligning yourself strategically is going to be critical in advancing your successful campaign. All right, and then obviously community-based organizations. Who are the groups that are organizing around the issues that matter in your community? Because they will have the analysis on what community partners are, what community members are concerned about, what the tensions have been between current sitting electeds and the ideas that they have that would actually maybe potentially benefit you and could help you shape your platform, but also create spaces where the people who trust and are aligned with their missions come along as well, because they have been introduced as a trusted validator and they're supporting you and the work that you're doing collectively, right? And then of course, sometimes we need to bring in the big guns, these national progressive groups, right? Because a lot of what happens in campaigns is like, they're cyclical and there's these trends. So there are tons of, in this cycle, we're seeing a lot of like socialist folks running, democratic socialists running, super left progressives, challenging moderate Dems and doing really well. And that is happening across the country. And so these groups that are engaging in all these fights can help you connect the dots. They can help you get access to that national money. They can help you figure out how to align and present yourself, right? And they can get you in rooms, again, they can help elevate your campaign to a national level and the national stage, so that these issues that are happening on the ground, these conversations that are happening, this work that is being done is being elevated. So it's not just inspiring folks in your district, but people around the country are seeing this. You might actually be inspiring and engaging someone else to do the same kind of work and take the same kind of stance and run for office somewhere else, because they've gotten access to the work that you're doing and the risk that you're taking to do this work because of these national groups, right? And it's important. I will say this, as someone who has spent most of my career handling coalitions, it is like wrangling cats and dogs in the rain. It is chaotic, but it is important that you make these folks feel heard, that you all have a deep understanding of how to interact with each other, what the expectations, what the shared interests, and what the priorities are, so that it's clear that accountability is a thing that is established from the beginning. Keep that in mind, folks. All right. All right. So let's talk about what actually makes an effective political partner. You want folks who actually know what they're doing, and you don't want to, because again, we'll go back to having limited resources, that time, that money, and people. You have to maximize the effectiveness of your campaign by choosing the partners that will be able to give you the most bang for your buck. Right? And so these are just some questions that we need to really consider when we're evaluating who we should align ourselves with on these campaigns, right? Is the partner, will they have a positive impact on your organizing capacity? Can they bring in folks who already know how to train and know how to use VAN and Action Network and already have lists that they're helping you to use? Do they have volunteer lists that they're willing to give you, or email lists that they're willing to send emails for fundraising to? How are they contributing to that? Is this partnership even going to help you reach those previously inaccessible likely voters? Is this a partner that has a specific, has carved out a niche engaging with Black men who are formerly incarcerated, who are fighting to get their voting rights restored, right? Because you can't do the legwork that it takes to build those relationships with communities that have been negatively impacted by our current system. aligning yourself with folks who already have a presence and a foundational relationship in those communities is critical, because they will take their word as bonds. And it is important to have those relationships and to cultivate them, because they'll also show you, when you interact with these constituencies, how to effectively engage them in a way and to bring them along, right? Because it really is about like having that cultural competency and being able to communicate with people in a way that speaks to their experiences, right? And then third, please identify what you want to get out of the relationship, right? What do you want to get from them? How are you adding value to them? This is a mutual thing, right? And so go into these conversations understanding what your ask is, right? And then think about how, once you decide to take on these political partners, have you defined the scope of the relationship? This may be an MOU. This may be just like a clear understanding, some bullet points. This may be we've identified a person on the team that is going to interact with you and they're going to manage this relationship. Whatever it is, you need to set those expectations very clearly, because what you don't want to do is engage a political partner and then leave them with a bad taste in their mouth. Because any work that you do from that point on, you are going to receive resistance, right? So you want to make sure that the deliverables are clear, right? Oh, I always say, under promise, over deliver. All right, so let's talk about actually setting these partner expectations, right? Because it's one thing to talk about what it is you want, but accountability is where this is going to be critical, especially in communities that have been harmed by campaigns that have come in time after time, made promises, did fund, like ask for money, ask for support, and then actually didn't come through. And so it's important to set these partner expectations so that you and your partners are moving on the same, at least on the same wavelength, right? So this is literally just like setting up a meeting and hashing out like the specific goals and the purpose and the mutual benefits of the partnership. Make it make sense for both sides, right? Get to an agreement on production and approval timelines and processes. Okay, who do we need to vet things through? Who's going to be the person to make sure that if you're going to run if you are going to invest some money in something, or you're going to hold a forum, or you're going to do this or that you understand how the campaign is speaking about these issues. And if we need help on framing or shaping our platform or our messaging, and this is an issue that your group is an expert on, that we are coming to you and we are working on that. And there's a process and there is a way that there are accountability measures that are clear and agreed upon. I cannot tell you how many campaigns I have been on where I have seen people not communicate well, and it has devastated relationships, and it has had long-term ramifications, not just for the community, but for both the person who was running and their team, and for the partners who felt really disrespected. It is important. These are very small, this is little, minimal effort that you have to take, but it will have a maximum impact on your relationships with these partners who are going to be in the community long after the campaign is over, right? And then also, I just want to go back to time. Y'all, we do not have a lot of time on these campaigns. Set those deadlines, get them clear, and agree on these expected contributions so that we know that we have a good analysis of what kind of resources we have access to, because we know that we need to make sure that we are pacing ourselves when bringing these resources in and using them intentionally, very intentionally, all right? And then also make sure that we're setting these time limits and these termination parameters, right? So if you decide to go your separate ways, if there is an issue and it just like doesn't seem to make sense and you can't work it out, what does that separation look like? How are you protecting the information that you share with each other? Are there non-disclosures that you have folks sign so that you don't have to worry about them bad-mouthing your campaign because of a misunderstanding or things like that, right? Make sure all of this is done up front so that everyone has a clear understanding of how you're going to interact with each other. And I assure you, this goes a long way, especially with those smaller partners, with those community organizations who work in communities who are typically used to being talked to and then forgotten about after Election Day, right? So let's talk about we're going to do a scenario really quickly, folks. Let's talk about knowing what our limits are, right? So this is an example of something that happens all the time, right? So Nicole Strong has been chasing a partner for weeks, and she finally has secured an endorsement of a local business icon, Bruce Davis, who by far is the most high-profile endorsement to date, right? So this is a big deal. Unfortunately, the week before the co-produced video is set to drop, news breaks that one of Bruce's companies is under investigation for securities fraud. Ugh, yikes. Now, what advice would you give Nicole about this partnership and why? So folks, I want you to go to the chat and I want you to share how you would handle that situation and explain your reasoning for how you choose to deal with this situation. And I'm going to give folks I give you all 30 to 45 seconds to just kind of think about your responses and go ahead and jump in. I'd love to see what you all are thinking. All right, we got a good point in here while you all are thinking about how to deal with this very common, very stressful campaign crisis. How are we putting out this fire? Right? I'm just gonna read a few of these comments, right? So from Alana, as someone who's worked at both orgs and campaigns, I can say a problem in candidate approach. Candidates approach groups in the wrong order, right? Absolutely. So it's important to know who you need to talk to because there's what I like to call a kiss the ring tour. You need to go around and figure out who you need to talk to and ask folks to make the introduction and prioritize your needs. So what are we going? Oh, okay. Nicole is saying you need to have a conversation with Bruce. Absolutely. And then what else, folks? What else? Because this is a big deal. This is something that you've been building up to. Weeks on a campaign is a lifetime. So what does it look like? How are you dealing with this issue? Anyone else in the chat, go ahead and jump in. I'll give you about another 10, 15 seconds. And if we don't see anything else, I'll tell you how I would handle this. Okay, so let me tell you what I would do. I would call a meeting with my team and Bruce's, talk about this issue, talk about what their response is going to be, and then we would come up with an agreement. My thing is I think you need to have a plan, a backup plan, and a backup for the backup. So depending on whether or not this is a legitimate inquiry, how are we going to handle this? What is the messaging going to be? What is the shared messaging going to be? Does it still make sense to continue this partnership? And if not, who can Bruce recommend to step in who has similar credibility that can endorse, right? That doesn't have this cloud, because you don't want to take that on at a critical point in your campaign, right? And then you just take it from there. But it's important that the first thing that happens, you have a conversation you bring the teams together, you have your trusted folks, and then you got to make sure that you talk to other folks in the community, some of your other partners, community stakeholders who will understand how this information will land, right? You need to engage as many folks as possible in the conversation and the decision-making process so that you can ensure that you minimize the blowback on this and you don't step on a landmine. All right. All right, well, let's keep going because we have some role playing that we're going to be coming up on that will maybe help you all figure out how to deal with these issues in real time. Now, before we jump into the next session, I just want to know, does anyone have questions? Again, questions, comments, concerns, hopes, dreams, wishes, folks. Do we have any? Let me go ahead and take a peek at the chat. All right. I'm not seeing any questions. That means all of you are with me. I love it. Love to see it. So let's go ahead and jump into the next section. And let's talk about managing consultants. I know, it's so very exciting. There we go. All right. So let's talk about when we actually need to engage consultants, because a lot of times, and I say this as a consultant, folks will sell you things that you don't necessarily need. And so you need to know when and how you want to engage consultants. What are the weak spots on your campaign and on your team? What are the gaps that you need filled, right? So when we're talking about fundraising, you absolutely want to hire a firm or someone who has the experience with compliance and a small dollar donation strategy. I want to be very clear. People get messed up when they lose and do not handle their compliance, their filing. You will go to jail after you've lost a campaign because you have not filed the proper paperwork. We take campaign finance laws very seriously here. And it is important that you get the right person who understands, who has experience to hold that work. All right. Now, when it comes to communications, when you're doing polling, when you're investing in focus groups and just getting a sense of like what issues are resonating, and message testing, that's going to be critical to have someone who has a deep understanding of how to pull those things together, and make sure that they are doing sample polling in a way that makes sense, right? Making sure that they're reaching all the different types of voters, the constituency groups that you are in your district, so you can make sure that you are doing the research and effectively using their time to identify all of the opportunities for your campaign to collectively build within your community. And when it comes to field, right, when it comes to lit, this is the largest part of your campaign budget, right? Those ads, mail is so critical. And when you're identifying a firm, you want to make sure you have someone who's qualified and also understands how the cultural nuances of communications in your district or your state or whatever the role is that you're running, the seat you're running for, right? Because it's critical, because we've seen examples of firms putting out really tone deaf ads, and the backlash has a long-term impact, right? And also when you're doing texting, when you're doing paid texting or mass texting, you're acquiring lists for funders, of donors, of voters, right? You want to make sure that you're pulling someone in that can do that effectively and get you the best bang for your buck. And when it comes to digital, obviously ad placement, paid ads, geofencing, geotagging, all of that strategy that you're used, like bringing someone in to execute that strategy, and then graphic design. You want to make sure that your messaging is consistent and your graphics are in line with the messaging and that it captures people's attention. So you want to make sure that you're pulling in consultants who have experience doing this. All right. And then obviously GeoTV, right? That last push that we have, those paid canvassers, identifying someone who already has folks who are experiencing canvassing, and direct mail production, right? Making sure that you can do a quick turnaround on quality product so you can distribute it and it will arrive on time, right? It's important to keep these things in mind so that you have a clear understanding of when you're going in to interact with a consultant, because I know sometimes we have a tendency to defer to experts, but you need to be very clear on what you need so that you are paying for what you want and not for what you're being told you need, right? All right. Now that we've talked about when you get to encounter me and my kind, let's talk about developing a consultant management checklist, right? These people do not work for you. They are being consulted. These are not employees. And so it's important to make sure that you establish a rapport and immediately set up those accountability measures, right? How are you scheduling regular check-ins, communicating clear deadlines, and making sure that there's a specificity of a hard ask. What's the what, when, where, how, and if I can't get to you, who on your team do I reach out to, right? And while they don't work directly for your organization, right, they are coming on board to execute a specific task to advance your goals. So keep that in mind. And again, sometimes we have been conditioned to talk around an issue or to talk around a need and not to be straightforward and directly deal with our needs. But this is a critical time to get real comfortable with that. This is practice for when you have to tell your story and you have to answer hard questions from the community and deal with debating. So use this as practice and make sure you are clear on what you want, how you want it, when you want it, and how they're going to deliver it to you. It is important to be clear about that right? And we will complain about you being difficult as a candidate, but like, that's just a part of the fun of being a consultant, right? But make sure that this is all done with respect too, because this is work that we do, that we are passionate about, and that we want to make sure we do this work with pride, right? And so if you have questions, please understand that you can ask them, you can do the things, but maintain the respect, and because you just never know when you're going to need to engage a consultant or a firm again, or you want to recommend them for someone else. Just make sure, like, again, we all in this movement, this is a very small place. We run into folks again. We will see you again. And so just making sure that you do everything you can to establish a foundation on which this relationship can be a successful, productive, and mutually respectful one. Because consultants are people too, y'all. Okay, so let's talk about decision-making with consultants, right? A lot of times I know candidates think that they're the boss. And in a way you are, but on the campaign, there are things that you cannot control, right? You can have your opinion, you have the final say, but there are going to be times when you're going to have to take, you're just going to have to take people's experience and their word for making these decisions. And just be clear about what that looks like, because again, accountability is key. We do not have time to be going back and forth and figure out the things and dealing with power struggles, right? We have limited time, limited money, limited people. And sometimes consultants are working on multiple campaigns. And so we need to be able to be clear about how we make decisions so that we are on the same page, right? And so before you even go into these meetings with partners and consultants, make sure your team understands what the goal of these meetings are, right? Make sure that you have an understanding of what the takeaways from these meetings and these decisions need to be, where you want to land, what you are willing to compromise on, so that it's clear, so that you are coming in as a united front, right? And you can always tell partners if you need to do it, that you need to do a check-in with your team before you make decisions. So if you're coming in as the field manager and you're talking to a consultant or you're talking to a partner about a plan, you don't have to commit to anything directly in that moment. It is always, I am not doing this by myself. I need to check in with a candidate. I need to check in with the campaign manager. I need to check in with digital and our fundraisers to see if this is something that makes sense. We need to see if we can execute this and how it needs to be executed. And partners will understand that, right? And it's clear, keep this in mind though, partners are here to guide and to be advisors, but they do not get the final say in anything. Because at the end of the day, anything that is happening, it falls on the campaign, right? It's the same thing that we tell field organizers that work on campaigns. It's not what you do during the campaign. It is not about you. When you do something with this shirt on in the name of this campaign during this campaign cycle, you are representing an entire campaign. And so it's important that like partners understand that while their feedback is respected, is desired and valued, that the campaign still has to consider and prioritize like the end game, right? So that's just, as long as you are clear with all that, people will understand that and they will work with you accordingly. All right, folks, do we have questions on this section or do we want to keep it moving? Let's see what we have in here in the timeline. I'll be in the chat. And also, listen, my right hand, Jamie, has been dropping some gems in the chat. Please, we at NDTC have a massive online curriculum that is free to anyone who registers. Please come check about identifying your campaign needs and with consultants. There are links in the chat that do a deeper dive into these conversations that we're having now. Use them and tell everyone that you know about them so that they can access them too. Okay, I see no questions. Y'all are quiet. I'm not used to this. I'm used to folks who have questions. Okay, but that's fine because we're going to get into the nitty gritty, right? Let's talk about having those difficult conversations. So we have just like a timeline of how to actually address a difficult issue and how to ensure that that difficult conversation is successful, right? We all know that we all bring our egos and our emotions into this work because we care about it deeply. But it's important to focus when we have an issue that needs to be addressed. Let's start by just clearly defining and addressing that concern, right? And then you need to spend some time and actually listen and ask why, so we have the full context, a picture of this issue, of this crisis, of this situation that needs to be addressed. What is happening? What are the perspectives of the folks involved with this issue? What do they think are the solutions, and how do we come to a resolution, right? And then we need to really understand each role within the partnership, right? Who is responsible for holding which piece of this work? And then where are the disconnects, so that we can get to at least, again, if you can't get on the same page, at least get in the same book, in the same chapter, because that makes it at least easier to come up with a solution that works for everyone. And then you close this out. You agree on the action steps and the follow-up terms. If this is something that folks need to go back and do some research and address the issue, then set up the next time. Figure out the things that we need to do. All right, because again, this is about bringing our partners along and building beyond this one moment in the election cycle, right? This campaign is critical, but it is literally an opportunity to, in the long term, build collective power, which is what we need to affect and advance the progressive ideals that we want to see in our communities and in our leaders and in our partners, in our groups that are serving and engaging in our communities, right? So keep all this. Remember, you are aligned with these people for a reason. You may disagree on something, but you do agree that you are trying to advance and improve the lives of people through political power. And that is something that we can all get behind, right? Now, let's talk about where these roadblocks can be really difficult to these and hinder these successful conversations. Obviously, people stalling and trying to run out the clock. We don't have time on campaigns, right? You can give a reasonable amount of time to come back with a solution and to talk to the folks you need to, but there need to be hard stop deadlines. Make sure you address that and are clear about that. The self-inflicted wounds where folks feel like they've created a problem and now they feel like they're being attacked. That's fine. Guess what? But again, we are reminding ourselves that this is not about any of the individuals. We've come together to build power and to affect change through this campaign. And that is a priority. That needs to be the North Star that everyone that is addressing these issues, when we're having these difficult conversations, you get them clear and understand that. And I like to use examples of, like, not partners, but I think about when I have field organizers who are frustrated about certain things, and really just addressing with them. It's like, at the end of the day, you came to be a part of this campaign and you committed to sacrifice certain things because you believe in the common goal that we're all here for. So if that is going to be the case and you're going to continue to do this work with us, you have to understand that we are all giving up something so we can move this work along, right? We want to see the change, and change requires sacrifice, right? And so just keeping that in mind and giving people space to acknowledge that, but not allowing them to derail the conversations is going to be key. So find someone who has the temperament of a grandmother that can handle that and just bring folks together and keep them on track, right? Another really, like, a tool of sabotage, right? Unintentional and intentional at times, right? Is these guilt trips. Well, this part of the community, this, that, and the third, and these are the issues, and we can't just do this. Okay, then what is the compromise? How do we solve this problem so that this community isn't left feeling abandoned, disrespected, as they have been in the past? But how are we continuing to move the work forward? Because we still have to get this thing done, right? There's a certain level of, you have to just be mindful of that, right? And figure out the ways and identify the messengers for this, because sometimes it's not about what you're saying, it's about who is saying it. So you need to be very intentional. We're talking about a community or a constituency that has a lot of bitterness towards a particular group, and do not send someone from that group to address this issue. Find someone that these folks trust and consider a validator, and identify a way to address those solutions so that they feel seen and heard and valued in this work, right? And then, of course, obviously, The blame game. It's the oldest. It's so much fun to blame people, but the reality is we don't have time for blame. Acknowledge how the problem started, identify the context, and figure out a solution together and move forward. We all make mistakes. Sometimes people make poor choices. Sometimes things come up, and who cares? The end of the day, our eyes have to be on the prize. And the prize is electing a candidate who is in line with the community, in line with community stakeholders, in line with the party and what needs to happen in that district, and has a shared vision that we are advancing so that we can build long-term power. Period. That's what we're here to do. That's it. So anything that is taking away from that is not acceptable. It just isn't. So keep folks focused and identify the ways there, and it varies from situation to situation. And so it's just important to identify and build a team of folks who can be limber and creative and resilient in these moments, so that we can maintain this beautiful, diverse coalition of folks that we're building, right? Because that's the point. We are bringing all these communities who operate in silos and have shared interests, but have not identified those shared interests, right? To make sure that we get the work done that builds up a better, stronger, more beautiful community. All right, so let's talk about how to navigate conversations, y'all. If you're not an organizer, if you haven't practiced one-on-ones, right? Here's a couple of tips on how to do this. Please listen. Stop, look, listen, observe the body language, listen for the tone, right? You can tell if someone is upset about something and they're hurt because of this issue. You can glean from what they're saying if there's an underlying issue that needs to be addressed, right? And then really understand and identify the personality and communication types that are effective for people, right? Everyone doesn't internalize information the same way. The way we internalize information is largely cultural. And so it's important that, like, understanding regionally, community-wise, ethnic-wise, economic group-wise, right? Even just like in the way that you align yourself, gender identity, roles, all of those things impact how you internalize communication and communicate. And it's important to understand that and do that work. And I think that one of the most egregious things you can do is not attempt to meet people where they are, right? I always love to tell people this. I spent $70,000 on a public communications degree, and the only thing that I got out of it was the understanding that when you are addressing your audience, you have to keep your messaging within the realm of their perspectives and their worldviews. So if you are trying to address an issue and you are missing the boat on what is the problem for this group, for this partner, for this consultant, you are not going to get anywhere. So take the time to get to understand people. It's basic sociology, y'all. All right. And then also recognize your own power in your own role and step into that. You know, sometimes we take a step back and can be a little daunting to have these difficult conversations, but understand that you also play a role in this, and you're in the space and you have a seat at the table for a reason, right? So keep that, walk in that, but stay humble. Stay humble, please, because, you know, arrogance is not an attractive trait in a candidate. All right, so it's time to practice, y'all. I'm so very excited, and now it's time to bring up Jamie. Hey, Jamie.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Brittany?
Awesome. You know, living the dream, doing the things I want. Training the masses to liberate themselves and build power and go forth and conquer. So, folks, we have about 15 minutes left. All right, cool. So we're going to spend a few minutes just like role playing a scenario to just show you how to navigate these issues, right? Because sometimes you need to see how this plays out. And then we're going to debrief. So we have two scenarios that we're going to do. And Jamie and I will role play. And then we will ask you all to drop in the chat your feedback, your questions, your comments, concerns, and then we'll take it from there. Okay? Jamie, you ready?
Yes.
Beautiful. So our first scenario, y'all, a key political partner has asked your organization to co-host an event that will take up a lot of capacity to plan and execute, but will likely not have much positive strategic impact for your organization's goals. So we're going to role play this conversation. And while we're doing this, we want you to consider, one, what successful communication practices am I using? Is there something that I'm missing? Excuse me. And then also, how do I try to adjust and shift to create new expectations? So how are we resolving the problem, coming to a solution, right? Okay, so Jamie, go ahead, throw it at me.
Great. Hi, Brittany. So glad to meet with you today. I hope that the campaign for Nicole Strong has been going well. Us at the Teachers Union, we have this really great idea for this new event. We're going to do a 24/7, 24-hour-long improv-a-thon. So 24 hours of different improv groups talking about different political issues that matter to them. And we think this is going to be a really great way to help raise money for Nicole's campaign. She's been a great ally of ours. And so what we would need, we can book the venue and help find our improv people, but we will need your help with recruiting participants and help it to pay some of the improv people. So what do you think?
So I have a few questions. I would like to start with getting a better sense of how much time this would take, because we're about a month out and we're getting ready to kick off GOTV. So we're really focused on getting people the information that they need for early voting, for voting by mail, and making sure that we're setting up the infrastructure to give folks a ride to the polls and things like that. So I don't know how much capacity we'll have, but just give me a little bit more of a sense of what this would look like for us, and we can see if we can figure it out, because we love the Teachers Union. You all have been incredible, and we definitely think that this would be a cool thing to do. So just tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I think it'd be good to have 100 or so people there, and so we would need your help in making calls, finding those people, and making sure that they show up on the day of the event and are able to buy tickets to participate in that. And I think that'll be helpful as you go into GOTV to send out some late mail, help people get those rides to the polls with that money.
Okay, that sounds awesome. I need a sense of the timeline. So how soon are you thinking that we would do this event?
I'm thinking like a week and a half from now.
Ooh, okay, that's tight, because we're beefing up our field campaign to knock more doors and go through all the folks that we've already talked to, just to reassess their commitment to the campaign. And I'm wondering if we will have the capacity to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really great idea, and we've brought you a few ideas of other events so far, and it seems like you just haven't really been excited about any of them. So we really do want to help, but I'm kind of lost on how we can best help you.
Absolutely. So let me let's figure out a way. So first, I'm concerned about the timeline. We absolutely want to engage, but we have this really challenging. We have the incumbent has really outspent us 3-1, and we want to make sure that we're keeping on track so that we can actually get elected and support the Teachers Union in the long run. So would you consider maybe pushing this back to do a potential? What I think would be really cool is to have some early voting, like GOTV events that folks will come to and learn a bit more about, like voting by mail, if they're coming to pick up, if they need some help with registration, things like that. I think that a kind of like hybrid event would be dope too, right? And that's a way we can pull the community in, and also have folks just come just walk in too, right? So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I love the idea of kind of doing some voter registration stuff as well at the event. That's a great idea.
Okay, all right. I think we might be able to help with that. I just so if we could push this back another 3 weeks, would you be willing to push this back instead of it being in a week and a half, having it hosted in 3 weeks? Because that's going to be right at the start of early voting, and that could be like a kickoff event that we do, bring the whole community in, and then maybe I think it would also be cool to have like figure out how we can have some sponsor tickets for folks who can't afford to pay too. So it could be a hybrid, kind of like a hybrid fundraiser / improv, having a fun night, and then getting folks prepared for early voting. So if folks need to sign up they need a ride to the polls or do things like that. I think we could figure that out.
Yeah, it could maybe be like a suggested donation thing too, of like folks who can pay more can pay a little bit more to help those who can't pay on their own.
Nice. Yeah, have some folks sign up for shifts because we're definitely going to need some more volunteers to knock doors and make phone calls. So I think we can figure that out. I would just want to make sure that your team is good with the new date. So what else do you need from us? What information do you have? Do you have a write-up on this so I can take it back to the candidate and discuss with Nicole and the campaign manager and figure out what capacity we have? And then we can meet in like 2 days to just go through the checklist and figure out how we get this started. I think this would be really cool.
Yeah, and of course I'll have to take it back to my team as well, so we can meet back up and make sure that everyone's on board with it.
Okay, perfect. And then we can set up a team meeting and figure out what other partners can get involved with this, who may have capacity and have some resources to, if we can't contribute the time to do the phone calls, figuring out what other partners have capacity to do that, and then we can just plug them in so that we have a phenomenal event.
Okay, great. Well, I'll talk to you in a few days then, Brittany.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much, Jamie. I'm really excited about this. So let's go ahead and let's get it done. All right, folks. Thank you for participating in that. Jamie, you're incredible. But what I would like to hear from you all is feedback on that. What do you think that there were gaps in how we dress with that? All right, boom. Okay, I see Nicole. I love you, Nicole. You are so engaged. That's what I'm talking about. So Nicole says she asks leading questions, set expectations, use a collaborative language we. Absolutely, because at the end of the day, this is not my enemy. They might want to do something that doesn't make sense to me, that I'm tired and exhausted and I don't have the brain capacity to wrap my mind around. But we still have a shared interest. Jamie, do you have any feedback?
No, I think that went well. I thought you did a good job of kind of shifting the date, whereas not like fully taking away from my improv idea. And also when I was like, hey, I'm stressed out, like, yeah, I brought you other ideas and like you haven't really taken me up on any of them. So I'm kind of lost on like what you want. You did bring some ideas of like, here's what we do want to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is about getting to the solution and not figuring out who's right or who's wrong or whether it makes sense or whether it's a crazy idea. It's about getting to the middle ground that makes sense for everyone so you can move it along, right? Because again, if anyone understands limited time, resources, and people, teachers unions understand. They're a staple in campaigns. And so they understand more and they have a deeper understanding of that than our campaign does, because they do this every cycle. And so it's important to make sure in that, I just want to make sure in that, did you feel validated? And did you feel like I wasn't completely shutting you down?
Yeah, I was expecting you to ask me like why improv and like why that part of the event, which you didn't. But I think that would be the other thing of like, why do you want to do this event? And letting you share that information too.
I mean, honestly, I didn't ask that because I thought it would be a fun idea. I think for folks who are working campaigns, we need like, we usually have like a staff night. So that could be something where we roll into it's a way to, I think that like, and this is my personal, this is not the opinion of NDTC. This is the opinion of Brittany Baxter, consultant. I think that one of the things that we have to do when we working on campaigns is create unique opportunities to build community within the structure of moving the campaign forward, right? Not taking away completely from the work, but bringing folks to a place where they can enjoy each other outside of doing the door knocking, staffing the events, organizing, making the phone calls, right? And because that creates a much deeper foundation, and those relationships, those individual relationships that are built too, also go on beyond the campaign. And those are folks who will come back because it was a different experience for them than other campaigns where it's like, here, sit down, we brought you some pizza, make calls for 4 hours. When are you going to sign up to do this again? Thank you, that was wonderful, right? Less transactional and more community focused. And again, that goes back to that collective power building, right? But okay, so let's go ahead. Let me see, we're coming now, we got about 10 minutes left. So, all right, so let's jump into the next scenario, because I love a good scenario. And this scenario is a consultant who is a strong individual contributor to your campaign team frequently misses deadlines due to a series of legitimate personal difficulties. Now, here I want you all to consider the successful communication practices that we're going to use, and then the questions that I asked to try to understand the full context of what's happening, and then how we reframe this issue so that we can set new expectations. So, Jamie, you're going to be my consultant.
Yes.
So, hi, Jamie. I just wanted to check in on how the mail campaign was going, because we have missed a few deadlines for really just approving the lit and then getting it sent out. And I just wanted to check in to see what was going on, if there was something on my end I could do to help you figure out a better how to keep us on track.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a difficult past few weeks, Brittany, with so many campaigns have been coming to me with their mail to work on it. And at the same time, with remote schooling still going on, I've been having to help my kid a lot with her work, as well as, unfortunately, my mom is in the hospital right now. So it's just been a really difficult time for me. And so really sorry about missing those deadlines. And I will try and work, and I will make it happen.
Okay. Well, first, let me just completely acknowledge, yes, remote schooling is terrible. It has been so difficult. My son he's actually lucky enough to be in person school, but we're still dealing with the loss of like education and just the emotional regressions, the emotional regulation regression too. And so I completely understand. I know that we have some partners that actually do offer support services for parents who are still doing remote schooling for reasons like that. So let's talk about how we can help you with that. And I'll get you plugged into Clarissa from this really dope local organization that might be able to get you some resources and help you with that. And then let us know if we can help. If the nurses union has signed on. Let's figure out what hospital your mom is at. If there's anything we can, so you can focus on your work and make sure that like mom is good too, because I know it's really difficult when you have personal stuff going on with family, especially with COVID, right? Like it's hard to focus on the things that are important, but not as an emergency. So do we need to, I just wanted to acknowledge that first and just see if there's anything else you need.
Yeah, I think that would all be great, and thank you for your help. I will work on getting it under control too, so I can do this. But also, I want to make sure that I am focusing on like getting y'all the best work, rather than I wouldn't want to give you some half baked work to send out. So I'd really rather make sure that the quality is there, rather than the deadline, which maybe we're not on the same page about.
Absolutely. So we can take some time. I can how about this? How about you can you just go look at the contracts that you signed and look at the deadlines and see if you have a recommendation for changing the deadline so that we can still keep things on track. And then let me know if you need someone from our team to just kind of be point person and help support you, because we want to make sure that like we've given you everything that we need and you have the support that you need to do the work, because we definitely want your best. Right? Like you've done incredible work and we want to continue working with you, and we want to make sure that like we're giving you what you need on our end and you have the support you need to do the work.
Yeah, I'm sorry again for missing those deadlines. I should have reached out to you ahead of time to let you know.
I get it. I totally get it. I understand. I know when life gets in the way, it gets in the way. So let's agree to come back in. Well, tell me how much time do you need to come back with a new set of a new deadline, a new timeline and commitments?
Yeah, I can look that over tonight and get back to you tomorrow on that.
Perfect. Okay. And then so go ahead, send that over to me tomorrow, and then let's give us a day or so that we can review that, and then we can just set up a call with the team and figure out how we can work together to move this forward.
Okay, sounds great, Brittany. Talk to you later.
All right, talk to you later. All right, folks. So I would love to hear your feedback on this, because I think like this is a reality. A lot of times, those of us who work campaigns for a living, we are quite used to putting our lives on hold and disconnecting. But sometimes you cannot do that, right? Like I say this as someone who has missed my son's birthday because I was working GOTV in Florida for Andrew Gillum, right? sometimes we make sacrifices, but sometimes they're like, you cannot completely neglect your life and put it on hold. And I don't think that it's healthy to run campaigns where that is the expectation. You need that healthy work-life balance, right? And so really interested in seeing folks' feedback on this. Do folks in the have thoughts? And also, Jamie, go ahead and explain the evaluation that you've dropped in the chat, and then just give your feedback on how the conversation went.
Yes, so I just dropped an evaluation for Brittany as we are about to wrap up this session. So please fill that out with feedback on how she did and the content that you learned today in the session. That's really helpful for us, and it's totally anonymous. Yeah, I think the feedback is you first kind of started with kind of help, and here comes my cat. You kind of started helping me out with my personal issues before getting into it, which I think is helpful in terms of needing first to deal with those difficulties before I can actually give you the best work. So I thought that was really helpful.
Absolutely. I mean, and I tell candidates all the time, right? You cannot fully focus on running for office if your financial, your physical, and your family security is not on sound ground. And so it's important to prioritize that and address that, because if I'm worried about my mom and my child, I really don't care what you're saying. I don't. I mean, I want to care, but I can't, because the things that are closest to my heart are not in a good place right now. And so my thing is, like, if you want people to, if you want your partners, if you want your consultants, the folks that you are paying to participate in this movement that you are building, because that's what campaigns are. They are mini movements, right? You have to be able to still see them as human beings. And I think that's where we've kind of fallen short as Democrats, is we run two transactional campaigns and we leave the humanity out of these campaigns. And that's what really brings people to supporting candidates and issues, is they feel seen in the issue and they feel seen in the candidate. And that's why they want to engage. And so elevating that and centering that as much as you can in the work is how you solve these problems in a way that allows us to move forward. Ooh, excuse me. Sorry, y'all. I haven't slept in a couple of days, so it's a little crazy over here. All right. So I want to close up. We have about a minute or so left. So I want folks to just kind of jump into the chat and talk about, just name the one skill that you most want to work on and improve in your own conversations. And as you do that, I'm going to just go over the takeaways for this training, and to remind you that you can go to traindems.org, sign up, and get lots of deeper dives into the conversation that we've had today, because it's free and you should use it. So takeaways, while folks are dropping in the chat their desired skill improvement goals. Consultants and partners can add and should add power and capacity to your work. Define your expectations. Clear foundations are the foundation of successful partnerships. And then 3, you can overcome difficult conversations with strong communication tools, right? And we have plenty of training on that as well. Lots of role play and all the things. So go to traindems.org, check that out. And let me just take a look to see if folks have added anything into the chat. All right, okay. Boom, Nicole, I love you, girl. Accepted responsibility, teamwork makes the dream work. We express understanding, which is impressive, and miss deadlines. Honestly, it happens. You know, campaigns are constantly moving. Things are crazy and hectic, and you just have to be nimble. You have to be nimble, you have to be flexible, but you do need to still be firm to make sure that you keep these trains on the track. Because what's the one thing we know about campaigns, people? We have limited time, resources, and people. So diligently use those resources how we can. Remember all of this. Stay strong, get ready for midterms, take care of yourselves, and remember, we do this better. We move along when we move faster along. We move further together. If you want to move fast, go by yourself. If you want to move further, we have to move as a collective. That's how we build power, and that's how we get free. So thank you for joining us tonight. We were super, super happy to have y'all here. It was a pleasure to get to engage with you all and talk to you about partnerships and building collective power to move us forward as a party. Good luck on your campaigns, and don't hesitate to reach out to the team at NDTC or to me at Brittany@politicalnoir365.com. That's my email. I'm sure Jamie will share it in the chat. And enjoy the rest of Netroots, folks. Hopefully next year we'll be able to do this together. All right, and in person. So In the meantime, stay safe. Ooh, breaking things.